Dear Digital Product Passport community, welcome to today's episode of the 4TheRecord podcast. 4TheRecord is a consultancy agency that helps institutions and industry players to develop and implement their digital product passport and business wallet strategy. Today, I'm joined by Eric Ruyters, Secretary General of EUCOBAT, the European Association representing national battery collection schemes. With Eric, I explore the perspective of the battery collectors industry with a focus on the benefits of the battery passport coming into force on February 19th in 2027. We are discussing the role of the battery collectors in the new battery regulation, the business model behind battery collection, and of course the battery passport, if it will serve everything, what battery information collectors actually need, and why information on cells and modules matter more than pack-level data. The challenges of the collectors industry ahead and what needs to happen next. This episode provides essential insights for battery manufacturers, automotive OEMs, recyclers and reusers, and also policymakers shaping today's circular economy frameworks. I wish you an informative entertainment. Welcome to the podcast Digital Product Passports Insights. My name is Susanne Gudalowski and I'm the CEO of 4TheRecord, a digital product passport consultancy agency. My guest today is Eric Ruyters, Secretary General of EUCOBAT, the European Association of National Collection Schemes for Batteries. I'm delighted to have you on the DPP Insights show today. Welcome, Eric Ruyters.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me today.
Sure. Eric, today I would like to speak with you about the view of the battery collectors industry on the new battery regulation and how the battery passport becomes mandatory, on February 19th in 2027, and how it can help make batteries more sustainable. So, at first, please introduce yourself and your organization, maybe your members and your goals.
Yeah, thank you very much. And well, as you introduced yourself already, for me, I'm indeed the Secretary General of EUCOBAT. EUCOBAT is the European Association for Collection Schemes of all waste batteries. I on purpose say all waste batteries because often in the past it was only focusing on portable batteries. But with the new battery regulation now in place, we have 5 categories of batteries called, and all our members are working actually in all these 5 categories to collect them, take them back, and to make sure that they are recycled or in a good way reused, because that's the new incentive of the regulation, prolonging battery life cycle.
And you say reuse specifically because in the old regulation, you were only allowed to recycle the batteries, right?
Correct. The environment regulation is quite clear on that part. Waste batteries can only be recycled. So our members needed to collect the batteries and then make direct agreements with the recyclers for recycling of these waste batteries, which is a shame because there are still batteries who can be reused in different applications, in different use. And that's a good idea of the spirit of the Green Deal.
Yes. Absolutely. So let's talk about what this new battery regulation brings for battery collectors and what are the requirements of the OEMs that they have to fulfill in the battery regulation. How do they work with battery collectors?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things to set. As I said, in the past, EUCOBAT was mainly seen as the portable batteries collection schemes. This was based from the battery directive, where portable batteries had collection targets, network obligations, etc., etc. And for the industrial batteries, this was in actually different scope and view. The battery regulation, however, is changing that part of the view. There are new categories now in. So LMT is about e-bikes and e-scooters, is a different category now, which is actually also needed to have a collection scheme network in the country and collection targets. But when you go to the industrial batteries, they're still split with electric vehicle, and you have start lighting ignition batteries. And with these batteries, there is a change from the battery regulation, from the battery directive to the battery regulation. And that fits mainly in the fact that the battery regulation is enforcing that these waste batteries need to be taken back for free, not old for new, despite origin, so brands, and also despite chemistry, meaning lithium or lead. And that makes a full change in responsibilities, but also the way of working on taking these batteries back in these specific categories.
And it's also true that every OEM has to take back every battery from other OEMs, correct?
Well, when you talk about OEM, when you look to the battery regulation, we need to define that as a producer responsibility. So is the OEM having a producer responsibility at that time? Are they the ones putting the battery on the market? Because then you are the producer. Right?
Yeah.
If this is towards other parties and they put them on the market, then there's a different split. But if they put the battery on the market, they are having these responsibilities. And if they stay in their own closed loop system, as often is called, they also have the responsibility to take back the batteries from their competitors, to call them competitors, and also different chemistry. So there is no limitation. When you are putting a battery on the market in a specific category, say industrial, you are responsible as a producer to have the obligation to take back all the batteries of that specific category.
I see.
That's a big change.
Yes, it's a big change. I agree. Yeah. But it's also probably good, and it's good for the industry and makes it easier to return the batteries.
Absolutely.
Now, just for a short side question, how do other regulations affect the business of battery collectors?
Oh, well, you cannot see any regulation as a standalone regulation on that part. Everything is linked with each other. You have many embedded batteries. So when you have embedded batteries in appliances, for example, that means that the WE directive is also enforced there, but also on the ELV directive. There's a lot, of course, the batteries in the car.
With EOV, you mean end-of-life vehicles, right?
No, electric light vehicles.
Okay, electric light vehicles.
So the vehicles, electric vehicles part, which there are a lot of regulations for the vehicle itself, nothing to do with the battery, but the battery part is of course linked in that car. So you have always these connections with each other. The battery regulation, however, tries to set everything stand alone. So also in regulating dismantling of batteries from appliances or other equipment, the way you need to do the design of your product to be able to get the batteries out, this is all in the battery regulation. And so the link is there, but it is standalone on that part. The second part in linking to other legislation is, of course, the moment you collected waste batteries, you have to deal with the waste shipment regulations and all the other regulations around how do you transport the battery from A to B. That's sometimes the most complex part and creating the most issues on that level. But yeah, you cannot see it as a standalone regulation.
So the battery collectors are not only serving the new battery regulation, they're also serving other regulations, such as the waste shipment regulation or the like.
Yes, so the battery producer schemes who collect the batteries on the behalf of their producers. First of all, the battery regulation is their main principal work and attention. But the moment they collect, then they need to take care of ADR regulation, how to transport waste batteries.
Stands for
the literally wording, but it's all has to do with the transport of waste in total, and in this case of waste batteries. And then the classification of the batteries, whether they are dangerous, hazardous, and how to seal them, compact them, and how to transport them. All these things are in that part. Where can you go? How it needs to be notified, and all these things are also impacting also on the collection and take back of batteries. But that's due to the fact that they are waste, and then you have different rulings.
Thank you for clarifying that. I think that we almost have answered this question, but let me still ask where the battery collectors are located in the life cycle of the battery. When do they, start their action?
So when you take the role of the extended producer responsibility and the producer organizations, they stand in the moment when the battery becomes end of life. So you have, of course, mining, getting the raw materials. You have manufacturing, making the battery. Then you have the manufacturers or producers selling the batteries to the market. So this is all in the pre-work of the collection schemes. And the user phase, how consumers or industry use the batteries, also that is all out of scope of the EPR part. The moment the battery becomes waste, there also the collection schemes enter. And this is mainly what you can see in Chapter 8 of the battery regulation, where extended producer responsibility is defined, where the collection is defined in the collection targets for portable and LMT batteries, where the take-back obligations are defined for electric vehicles, industrial and SLI batteries. And then, of course, recycling, which is out of scope of the producer responsibility, is of course the responsibility of the recyclers, but this is all captured with each other in one chapter of the regulation.
I see. Thank you very much for also clarifying that. Now, especially with the information that everyone who puts a certain battery category on the market and they have to take them back, what's the business model and how is this funded if I have to take back every battery that's on the market, even the ones from my competitor?
So with the battery regulation, you see that most of the producers join the collective, the producer responsibility organization, because then everything is captured by the total collective, and whether it is your competitor or not, that doesn't matter because you're all in the collective as such. So that is what you now see in the market transferring, not only for the portable batteries but for all categories as well. And then because the battery needs to be taken back for free, not old for new, and all these new meanings, it means that you see a change of business model in the market, where the producers now joining also the producer organizations pay a fee in advance, meaning when the battery is put on the market, then they pay a fee to the producer organization to be able, at a later stage, organize the take back, the transport, everything around that part in insurance and the recycling of that specific battery. So the whole EPR part of the producer is then managed by the producer responsibility organization, which makes it much easier on the fact that, then it doesn't matter anymore in your competitor, because that's also in the full scheme. If there is maybe room to have individual schemes, but then if you're an individual scheme, you still have the same definitions and rulings. That means you need also to deal with your competitors' batteries. I'm not sure if then this individual scheme has enough financial means to do that, because you need to take them for free. So this is a huge change also for the whole market, because the market in the past on the directives was actually working in a pay-as-you-collect system. So the battery was on the market, and once it was end of life, there was a contact with producers' organization schemes to take back the battery, and then this was done on a payment base at the cost at that moment. But if you need to take it back for free, and all these other business models around, then you need to have, of course, a financial means on forehand to be able to do it at a later stage.
For our listeners, this organization that the fee is paid to, is that one organization or are there several organizations?
That depends country per country.
Ah.
So in some countries you have more producer responsibility schemes, and in some countries you only have one in the specific category. But that's okay if that doesn't matter whether there's 1, 2, or 3 or 4. What is important is that the moment you are joining one of these producer schemes, you also hand over your producer responsibility to that scheme, and they will take care of your producer responsibility with a payment, of course, of the batteries you put on the market, which is also actually in a different fee schedule. Of course, an alkaline battery is in a different cost than in lithium battery, for example. So there's also this profiling that everybody pays their share on the cost of the battery they have. Otherwise, maybe if you only put alkaline batteries on the market, you will have a higher fee because the lithium batteries are at a much higher cost of taking them back and recycling them. So there's also this modifying in the fees of the waste cost to that specific chemistry.
I can imagine for those companies, for the collectors, what are their challenges? You mentioned before that the battery chemistry is also changing. So how do they work and where do they have to adapt and where are their challenges?
Well, there are many challenges, unfortunately, on that part. But that's also a good reason to organize and to join the groups and the collectives. Because stay individual, then you need also to solve and take care of all the problems yourself, which is in a collective much better. But besides the chemistry issues, there's of course also the market dynamics and changes in the market. 20 years ago, lithium batteries were almost not there. Now you have many lithium batteries in supporting, of course, the whole electrification of the market. Almost everywhere in a product you have a battery. Even in the products as a consumer, they don't know there's a battery in. So there's a lot of involvement there. But new batteries are also joining the market. We are talking about solid waste batteries and what will be the effect of that part, besides a possible lower risk in incidents around the battery. But how should we collect them? How should we recycle them? That's the next question. But when you stay to the current market with lithium, there's a lot of issues around lithium. A lot of fire incidents, either caused by the lithium battery or getting a boost due to the lithium battery around a fire. Because then also that will be an effect of that part. And this is, of course, a very important topic, which we need to address in the whole chain on how to limit waste fires on that specific part.
Of course.
But other things are the recycling topics. LFP is a battery where there is very limited possibilities of recycling in the EU region. And everything needs to stay in the EU region on that part. All batteries became hazardous and on that level. So transport to outside EU will be a very complicated topic, meaning then there should be enough recycling facilities in the EU region to be able to recycle all the batteries. And there you have a disbalance.
Very true.
There you have a complete disbalance in when will all the batteries currently on the market come into the waste and come into the recycling. There is not enough recycling capacity at the moment, although on paper there's a lot of recycling capacity possible. But our members have huge difference in where to go with the LFP.
Okay.
Because LFP is not the profit business model at the moment for the recyclers, as far as we know. Because I'm not talking on behalf of them. Just to make sure on that point, I'm talking on behalf of our members, and this is the issues we see currently in the market, that you need to collect these batteries, but there's no recycling facility possible.
Okay, I mean, we still have a little bit of time, especially when we think about the battery passport now, looking at how the battery passport can help. When do you see when do you think we will see the first effects of the battery passport?
Well, that's probably say in the next 10 years, unfortunately. The battery passport is an obligation next year, as February, as you mentioned. But then obviously the batteries, and especially when you talk about lithium batteries, their battery life cycle is much longer on that part. But it could be sometimes shorter, but say 10 and maybe even 15 years, it could take before the battery is end of life. And then it's to be seen in the collection. But we do think the battery passport is a very good tool. It's not about against the tool of battery passport. On the contrary, because it could help locate who is the producer, understand what is the content of the battery, the state of health of the battery, and these things. But also in the reporting part, where is the battery? Is the battery still on the market, or is it end of life? Is it recycled or reused? All this information is very important to understand. So from that perspective, it's good to have the passport. The only issue there is that on a political level and a regulation level, the battery passport is linked only to the pack, the full pack, how it's put on the market.
Yes.
But you can imagine the market is not about the full pack. The market is about the modules and even cells. And when this is not linked to the passport, then the whole system drops, because we don't know where the module goes to. We don't know where the module is linked to. And that's a pity. That's a pity. So we're strongly pushing also towards the Commission and other legislators to have at least a link towards modules, so that we can follow where the battery goes to on that perspective.
And to be honest, I've heard that as well in the discussions that I had, for example, with battery manufacturers, that say we want to identify different modules and cells. We also want to have some intelligence on modules and cells, for example, with sensors, where we can say the sensors, for example, are used to notice when a battery is overheating, a cell is overheating, or a module is overheating. And therefore, from the battery manufacturers that I've spoken to, I also believe that identifying the module and bringing more intelligence to the module or cell seems to be common sense in the market.
I can absolutely understand that, and I see this mainly on a manufacturing producer side, like how to put the battery on the market and to keep the quality as high as possible, as long as possible. I could be fully with that, and nothing against anything on that level. It is important to understand how the state of health of a battery is, especially when you collect them, because as I said earlier, waste fires around lithium batteries is an enormous issue, and we need to address that. We need to take care of that part, but the moment we can see this in advance, a cell is maybe overheating or having issues, and you can foresee that and then have your action to it to avoid any issues. That's of course a great topic to see how that develops. How I cannot say, because that's purely on their side to see how they can implement it. But
it's interesting that in the battery regulation, the security is actually not such a big topic, because of course it's mainly targeted to sustainability, and this is probably why. But in other jurisdictions, such as the Chinese market and also the US market, the security is a very large part of battery regulations, because batteries don't get insurance if they don't meet the security requirements, so fire security requirements of the batteries. So I believe that maybe jurisdictions and laws, probably also the European law, will adopt also more requirements on security on batteries at some point. But I thought that was interesting that our new battery regulation doesn't look much after security, and others do.
No specific topics indeed, other than the CE marking, which is not giving any security, in my opinion. But about documentation around the batteries is an obligation. So there, at least you will be able to take out chemistries which should not be in the batteries, and so there should be some more balance there. due to the administration fulfillments and security there, but having a safe battery on the market, that's very complicated to put that in a battery regulation, I believe, because that's also on the manufacturing part, how they make the battery. So that should be also in their manufacturing regulations.
Yeah, possibly. I just noticed this, that the focus is a bit different in other jurisdictions. You mentioned that we will probably see batteries with battery passports only in 10 years. On one of the latest conferences that I went to on batteries, interestingly, someone said that we will be seeing batteries with battery passport also like immediately after it was introduced, because we have cars with accidents where you cannot then reuse the car. So not in large volumes, of course, but in smaller volumes, it seems we will be seeing them also earlier. And then one other interesting information that I learned was that batteries very often have a much longer lifetime than we think they have. So we think maybe the electronic vehicle battery is good for 10 years and then it loses a lot of capacity. But I learned that's actually not true, that they hold much longer and the capacity is much better after 10 years than thought at the beginning. So I guess we will see a lot of variants of when those EV batteries come back.
Absolutely. Now, you're fully right that, of course, immediately in introduction and put on the market, you will have incidents where batteries need to be taken off the market and are end of life. That is this parabolic way of there. But the main will be at a later stage. We talk about 10 years. Also based on the official feedback from the industry part, but we also know that electric vehicles tend to be more 15 to 20 years instead of 10 years. And when you look to industrial batteries, they tend to be 20 years also easily. And so yes, I'm fully with that on that part. And you will see batteries already at a sooner stage, but you also will see batteries at a much later stage. So this is this parabolic life cycle process.
Exactly.
Correct.
Maybe coming to one other point.
Yes.
Will there be penalties for not collecting batteries at their end of life?
Well, there is a penalty article in the regulation, but we need to see that in different perspective. So, as I said in the beginning, you have portable batteries and LMT batteries with collection targets.
And with LMT, you mean?
LMT stands for e-bikes and e-scooters as the main e-steps, for example, hoverboards. They are part of that.
Light means of transport, right? Is the abbreviation?
Yes, it would have been easier light electric vehicles, but they made LMT as a topic there. These batteries have all collection targets. If you not achieve these targets, there is maybe the possibility of a penalty, but there are many steps before also in the regulation where the producer responsibility organization will have discussions, of course, with the competent authorities to have recovery plans, how to achieve, because that's more important than using the money from the market to pay to not achieve. So it's much better to invest in how to achieve, is our perspective on that part. It will be more complicated when you go to the other categories because there's not a collection target for electric vehicles, industrial and SLI. But it could be that maybe an organization is refusing to collaborate on that part. And I could see it maybe if there's an individual closed loop system who refuses batteries from others, as the battery regulation is saying, you need to take back all of that specific category. And then I could see that if there's an ongoing refusing, there might be penalties because they're not in line with the regulation. But I don't know. It is difficult to see on that part. There's a lot of talks about penalties. We tend to talk about how can we make sure how it works, how can you implement the battery regulation in a correct way, and how can you make sure that you are able to collect and take back all these waste batteries. That's more our our objective and vision to that part.
That's, I guess, the right thing to do, to be proactive and constructive,
Right.
to reach the goals, of course. You mentioned these light means of transportation, so LMT, battery category, and you also mentioned the collecting quotas.
Yes.
Can we reach the quotas, or is something keeping us away from that?
There's a lot of this discussion on these quotas, and this has mainly to do with the way of calculating it. So the old way, let's say it like this, with the battery directive, is based on the put on market target. Mm-hmm. And the put on market based on a 3-year average. And if you know that all the batteries actually on average are much longer lasting than 3 years, mm-hmm. How can you achieve the target within these 3 years? So that's a lot of complication. So what now the Commission, European Commission, is working on, together with GRC and the Eco Institute, and of course the stakeholders of the market, is to move to an available for collection target. You know, It's not about collecting less; it's about how can you collect what is available, and that's what they now are trying to put in the right formula, so that at least you can talk about the right achievements. There will still be targets. There will still be challenging targets, because batteries end up sometimes in waste streams where they should not be. But at least you can identify them and then have your activity plans to make sure that you can collect them, or other steps on that level. But this is only for portable batteries and LMT batteries. The other categories don't have target settings as such. There is a take-back obligation, meaning that if a battery is end of life or becomes waste, there must be locations in the market where you can go to deliver that battery, and then the PROs, on behalf of the producers, will take these batteries back for free and then take it on in the full system. So that's a different setup. So there's two different parts on that level. And the take-back obligation is a very important one for these categories, because it is for free, they need to take it back.
Yeah.
And that's the setup which you now see in the countries with the implementation of Chapter 8, in how to enforce that, but also from a legal point of view, but mainly how to organize as a producer collective system.
There's one other topic that I wanted to discuss. Yes. You mentioned that recyclers need to report the batteries that they collect, but reusers only may report those collected batteries. What does that mean for the industry?
Well, yeah, that's an important part, because reporting is very important in the battery regulation. There's a lot of extra reporting, which is not always easy for the market, but I think it's important to have it for the visibility. Where are the batteries? Mm-hmm. So the producers need to report what is put on the market. They need to report where they bring it once collected or taken back. Then the recyclers also need to report. It's an obligation. They must do that in where they get it from, whether it's from which country, etc., etc. There is a new opportunity within the battery regulation, that's the reuse part of the batteries. And these facilities, these parties, have a different wording in the reporting. They can report. Mm-hmm. That's how the explanation is. And I always combine this: if I can pay my taxes or if I must pay my taxes. I think everybody understands then what I will probably do. Mm-hmm. And this is the issue we have, because the moment we have reuse of the batteries, but they become not visible anymore because the reporting disappears, or there is no reporting, then we don't know where the batteries are. Are they taken back? Are they collected? What will they do with the battery passport in the future? Where is it going? Is it staying in the same country? Is it going to another country? And that will mix and confuse the whole market on that part. And it's really important that also this group of a very good group reusing it, and so it's not against that part, but they also must report what is happening with these batteries. And then the full circle should be there.
So we have to create a level playing field for everyone who's taking back batteries. Thank you. That's, I think, is an important point.
Yes.
also, there's one thing that I was wondering is if the collectors find batteries with a QR code on, but actually the battery is inside of the car, not really visible. How useful is this QR code as a data carrier for the battery passport?
Well, they should be able to access the passport and then maybe have the state of health of the battery.
Yeah, that's clear. But what I meant is are they actually visible? How can a QR code be detected of the battery? Is it easy to read them after 10 years?
Well, after that many years, often not. You know, if I go to the facilities where collected batteries go in for sorting, no, they don't come in anymore shining as they were put on the market with shining batteries, good labels. Everybody can see the pictures and the colors. No, after 10 years or 20 years, people could imagine that maybe there's black or there's half of the label still there, or maybe none of the label is there. And then how can we identify the batteries? This is the difference between the theory of an idea and a legislation and how the market works. And I don't believe that's something we can change. So it needs to be really we need to see how we can improve that part on that.
So that leads me to the next question. What's your wish list? Wish list for battery passports, maybe, and how you think we can implement that wish list?
Well, when you look to the battery passport specifically, because that's in the full circle, because the battery regulation is an enormous monster where we have lots of wish lists there for the future. But battery passport is an absolute positive way. So we are absolutely following that part. But it is also important within the battery passport that the right people can access also the right information. It needs to be protected for the manufacturers, because I can imagine that you don't want your competitor to know all the details. But it's also important for the producer schemes to understand what chemistry is used in the battery. So that's a very important part. But the state of health is the most important level also. And responsibility. Responsibility. Who put the battery on the market? In which battery category is this specific battery? Because when you get a battery, I don't know whether this is an industrial battery or maybe it was even in an LMT, or maybe it was in an electric vehicle. So it's very important to be able to identify the responsibilities in the categories as well. And this should be also part of the battery passport. The producer should be there, the category should be there, the content should be there. And that's hugely important information on that part. So battery passport is a positive way. The only challenges we see is, of course, in a unified implementation, because there are many projects, and I have no idea how many of these battery passport systems will be on the market. Can we all read them? Can we all understand them? There will be a lot of investment necessary in the market to be able to read the passports. So there's some ICT issues still behind, but let's not use that as a ignorance. Let's see how we can solve it on that part.
I think I'm more confident on that part, because I know that there will be standards to implement battery passports, and there will be unified systems. Maybe just 2-3 ways on how to look up the battery passport, which are easy for the consumer and for the supply chain and repairers and reusers to read and find. So I'm not so worried about that part. Eric, we are at the end of our recording. It was a real pleasure to speak with you. Thank you for all these insights and your knowledge that you shared with me and our listeners. Thank you very much for coming.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation. And indeed, as we said in the beginning, you can talk for hours about this. Who would have imagined that you can talk for hours about batteries?
Thank you.
It is a real pleasure to have joined your podcast, and I hope we could enlighten more on that level. And otherwise, I'm more than happy to join another one in the future, if that could support you and your listeners.
Thank you very much, Eric.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.